What's happening, everyone, and welcome back to 212 Projects. So in the last video you've seen that we managed to get the Max Power Corsa out for its first proper drive, and I'm still buzzing that it actually left here and arrived under its own steam. First time I've ever done an engine swap, first time I've ever done this much to a car, and for it to actually work is brilliant. I did mention at the end of the last video that there was a few issues, but I didn't talk about what they actually were, so I'm going to tell you now. The first issue is it was struggling to go into gears, especially into second and then second into third. It was really struggling, like, to the point where it actually physically wouldn't go into gear, so that was a bit alarming. But after some research and some investigating, we think that it's the physical gear stick itself, because it's so old and worn, that it's so loose and it's just not slotting into gear properly. So we're going to get a rebuild kit for that, and fingers crossed that fixes that issue. But the second issue is probably going to be the biggest issue. We think the head gasket is gone on it. So everything points towards the head gasket. There is plumes of smoke coming out the back, the exhaust tip was wet, it's losing coolant, there's no visible leaks of coolant anywhere, so we think it's possibly a head gasket. But if it is a head gasket, then it's only just starting to go, because it still drives absolutely mint. Like, it's not misfiring or anything like that. Like, it drives mint, it pulls well. So if it is a head gasket, then it's just starting to go. But we need to properly investigate that to work out if it is a head gasket or not. I've ordered a rebuild kit for the gear stick, so while we're waiting for that to come, we're going to start investigating the possible head gasket failure. So first thing we're going to do, and first thing you should always do when investigating issues, is we're going to plug it in and scan the codes, because it did ping up the engine management light when we were out for the drive. So I just want to see what codes is brought up, and fingers crossed that should hopefully tell us exactly what's wrong with it, but I very much doubt it will. But regardless, we're going to plug it in, scan it, and see what it's saying. So as you've just seen, we've scanned the car, and there were actually two codes on the ECU, but they were both related to the speed sensors. So I'm relieved that it's not pung any codes up to do with the engine, but also I was kind of hoping there was going to be maybe a code there that kind of pointed me in the right direction. However, there wasn't. It's only two codes for the speed sensors, which is absolutely fine. I know that they're not working anyway. So now we're going to pop the bonnet and have a look at the actual engine. So first off, I'm going to whip the spark plugs out and have a look down the cylinders to see how the top of the pistons are looking. If they're wet, then that's a clear indication that there's coolant getting into the cylinders, which indicates head gasket. But if they're dry, then we keep investigating. So I've just pulled the spark plugs out, and to be honest, they don't actually look that bad. Number one looks a little damp, but the rest of them aren't actually that bad. So we're going to have a look down the cylinders and see what the top of the pistons look like. So I've just had a look down the cylinders and top of the pistons, and 2, 3 and 4 don't actually look that bad. They're dry, a wee bit of carbon build up, but nothing too major. Number one looks a little damp, the same as the spark plug. So what I'm going to do now is fire a compression tester on it and see if it leaks, basically. 2, 3 and 4 I'm not really that worried about, but number 1 is worrying me a little bit. So like I said, going to slap the compression tester on it and see what that shows us. So as you've just seen, we've compression tested the engine, and just like the codes, it's good and bad news. The good news is all the cylinders are absolutely mint. There's no leaks, they're all within 10 psi of each other, perfect. The bad news is that cylinder number 1 that I was worried about is absolutely fine. I built compression on it, I left it for a good 10 minutes and it held. No leaks, no drop in pressure, nothing. So the good news is the engine's absolutely mint, there's no leaks, nothing. The bad news is I now need to think about what's next, because I don't know. So I might go speak to an actual real mechanic, because I am not a real mechanic. So I'm going to go do that and have a think, do some more investigating, and then go from there.
Day 2.
So it's the next day and I've managed to get myself a coolant system pressure tester. So what that means is I'm going to pressurise the full coolant system and look for leaks basically. Now, if I do this and there's a visible leak underneath the car, then it means I can trace it and it's leaking externally and I can fix that, which is great. But on the other hand, if the coolant disappears and there's no leaks underneath the car, then it means it's leaking inside the engine and I need to find out where it's leaking from. So we're going to get this hooked up, pressurise it, and fingers crossed we can see something.
Yeah, West Maria, baby, Money County, California, cloudy vibes. Y'all ain't ever seen nothing like this before. Yeah. Till we shipped it your way.
I got a bunch of bloods with me, and you can get high too. Get alive, get right with the righteous do. Elevated off Gorilla Glue, yeah. Everybody hit the dab, it's a bag, got the best bag in the groove. Yeah.
Okay, so as you've just seen, I've pressure tested the coolant system, and like the compression test and reading the codes, it's good and bad news. It's good news because the system's pretty much fine, it's sound. It's bad news because it hasn't really told me what I want to know. So pressurised it up to 10 psi, left it for 10-15 minutes and the level dropped very slightly and the pressure dropped maybe like 1 psi if that. But there's a leak from the bottom of the radiator, which I don't know if you've just seen or not. So there's an external leak from the bottom of the radiator, which is fine, I can fix that. But it hasn't really told me anything else. If it was leaking internally, if the head gasket was gone and it was leaking internally, then the pressure would drop significantly and the level would drop significantly because it would be filling the cylinder. But none of that has happened. So what I might do is pull the spark plugs back out, have another look down the cylinders on the top of the pistons, see if they're wetter than yesterday, and if not, I'm kind of stumped because I don't know what to do next. So I'm going to whip the spark plugs out, have a look down there, and I'll check back in and let you know what I'm doing next, because I have no idea. So I thought I was onto something there, but it turns out to be another dead end. I've taken the intake pipe off and the throttle body because there's a coolant line, I don't know if you can see it, at the back there that runs through the throttle body. So I thought maybe that might have been leaking into the intake manifold and then leaking that way, but turns out it's a bit manky, but turns out it's pretty dry. There's no signs of coolant or anything in there, so that was another dead end, unfortunately. So I'm going to put that all back together and then think of what's next. What's happening, everyone? So it's been a couple of days since you saw that last clip and I've managed to get a sniff tester. So what that does is it goes on the coolant bottle, we run the engine, and that will tell me if there's any exhaust gases in the coolant, which will definitively tell me if it's a head gasket or not. However, I've spoke to a couple of people, like real mechanics who do this as a job, not a pretend mechanic like me, who said if it's not the head gasket, then it possibly could be turbo related, which I kind of knew that. So because the turbo is coolant cooled, So there's oil feeds and there's oil coolant lines into the turbo. They've suggested to bypass the coolant lines on the turbo, so basically bypass the turbo, because if it's turbo related, then the coolant's not touching the engine, it's not going anywhere near the internals of the engine, it's basically going into the turbo, straight out the turbine and then down the exhaust. So I'm going to do a sniff test, see what that tells me, and then depending on what that tells me, I'll look into the turbo and then I'll go from there. We're just, everything that I can do to avoid, well, everything that I can do right now before ripping the engine apart is what's happening, because there's no point ripping the engine apart if it's something completely different. So yeah, like I said, do the sniff test, see what that tells me, and then move on.
Everybody hit a dab, it's a bag, got the best bag in the world. Flipping that tray, tagging and moving that blaze, blowing and smoking the breeze.
Walking through the trees and I'm smelling that loud. 20 years I've been smoking and I can't stop now. Pounds of the good everywhere that I look. I don't know about you, but she got me hooked. Never tried no pills, never tried no blow. No. The love of Mary Jane is all that I know. She got me high and she got me by. She paid my bills, she paid my grind.
So as you've just seen, we've done the sniff test and it's quite conclusive that the head gasket is not gone, which is such a relief. We've done a sniff test first and nothing happened, so we thought the fluid wasn't really working. So we've done a wee test on it, as you've just seen, of me blowing into the tube, and it changes from blue to yellow, which means there's CO2 in it. So then we put it back on, properly sealed it, got the coolant up to temperature, and it started to change green, as you might have just seen, which meant it was getting too hot. So we know pretty conclusively that there's no exhaust gases in the coolant, which means that the head gasket is absolutely fine. But what does that mean now? Well, there's still a leak somewhere, there's still coolant getting into the exhaust somewhere. So like I mentioned before, we're going to move on to the turbo. We know the engine's fine, the head gasket's fine, it's not that. So we're going to move on to the turbo. There's a coolant inlet and a coolant feed to the turbo. So what we're going to do is basically bypass the turbo. So we're going to disconnect the two coolant lines into the turbo, connect them up, run the car, not for too long because obviously we don't want the turbo getting too hot, and pretty much see what happens. Fingers crossed the smoke out the exhaust dies down or stops completely, which would tell it's an issue with the turbo. If that doesn't happen, then we're back to square one, back to the drawing board. So going to get cracked on with the turbo lines.
A few moments later.
Right, I know I literally just said that we were going to bypass the turbo with the coolant lines, but we came up with another idea. We thought that if the coolant was leaking into the turbo, then if we took the dump pipe off and looked into the turbo, then we would see that it's either wet or dry. So we've done that, we used the borescope, and we found another issue that's got nothing to do with coolant, funnily enough. So I'm going to put the footage we got in from the phone, but you can see that the turbine is moving forward and back quite significantly. A lot more than it should, I'll say that. So, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the video, but there's a wee damp spot that looks like oil. So we're now going to pull the turbo off, pull that apart, and go from there, because I think right now, after all the testing that we've done, we know the engine's fine, we know the head gasket's fine. I'm pretty confident in all of my limited knowledge of mechanics and engines that it's the turbo. There's an issue with the turbo, so we're going to pull the turbo off, look at that, and obviously with the turbine wheel moving as much as it is, then there's definitely an issue there. So we're going to get cracked on, pull the turbo off, and yeah, go from there.
Never tried no pills, never tried no blow. No. The love of Mary Jane is all that I know. She got me high and she got me by. She paid my bills, she paid my grind. Took me there, she inspired my mind. Be a cloudy mind to the day that I die. Always been there every time that I need. So I water that pot and I grow that weed.
I got a bunch of bloods with me.
The next day.
So it's the next day and we're not any further forward. The turbo's still in the car, because yesterday, halfway through taking everything off, my mate texted me and asked to go to the pub. And after finding out that the tugboat is more than likely gone, a drink is exactly what I needed. So we ended up going to the pub. Turned out, wasn't actually too bad to be fair, but less than enthusiastic about pulling a turbo off today. But it needs done. I've got the supplies, so we're just going to get cracked into it.
You can get high too. Get live, get right with the righteous do. Elevated off Gorilla Glue, yeah. Everybody hit the dab, it's the bag, got the best bag in the crew. Yeah. Everybody hit the dab, it's the bag, got the best bag in the crew. Flipping that tray, taking and moving that breeze, blowing and smoking the breeze. Yeah.
All these rappers always talk about.
So, as you've just seen, we've pulled the turbo off. The joys of cars, you build everything up, get it all running, get it out driving, and then strip it all apart. But come on, I'll show you what exactly is wrong with the turbo. So, this is the issue. That should not be doing that. Now, I've said it many times, I'm no expert, but that's shagged. So, we're going to strip this down and hopefully it hasn't scored any of the housing and we can reuse the housing, and fingers crossed we can just get a new internal and throw it back in the car. But we won't know that until we fully strip it down, and that's going to be on the next video. So, we're going to end the video here. It's been a bit of a long journey trying to find out what exactly is wrong with it, but I think, judging by that, we found the issue. So, like I said, I'm going to end the video here. On the next one, you'll see us stripping this down and hopefully fixing it and putting it back together and putting it back on the car. But, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.